By the 1850s, people thought that the New Zealand Wars were history. There was no fighting, and Governor Grey reported that he had succeeded in peacefully imposing empire on the Māori.
Both races already form one harmonious community, professing the same faith, resorting to the same courts of justice, connected together by commercial and agricultural pursuits, and enjoying the same public sports.
But sport and commerce were not empire. 20 years after the Treaty of Waitangi, most Māori continued to rule themselves while trading actively with the growing settler population. For many Māori, this meant selling land, not only for the price it fetched, but also to get Pākehā neighbours. Up until the early 1850s, land selling accelerated. In Taranaki and Waikato, however, Māori found a way of plugging into the Pākehā trade without selling land. Using their own carts, canoes, sometimes even their own coastal ships, they sent their produce over long distances to markets in New Plymouth and Auckland. They did not need Pākehā neighbours to get Pākehā trade. This freed them from at least one of the pressures to sell land, and in their regions, a land holding movement began to emerge. It advocated an end to land sales across the whole country. In the mid-1850s, this in turn led to one of the most important developments in the whole of Māori political history, the rise of the King movement.
I see no reason why any nation should not have a king if they wish for one. Why should the Queen be angry? We shall be in alliance with her and friendship will be preserved. The governor does not stop fights and murders amongst us. A king will be able to do that. Let us have order so that we may grow as the Pākehās grow.
After a series of great meetings involving many tribes, a consensus on kingship was reached. In 1858, a great general of the musket wars, Pōtatau Te Wherowhero, chief of Ngāti Mahuta, was anointed Māori king. Although the king movement was centred on the Tainui tribes of the Waikato, support came from nearly 2/3 of the major tribal groups of the North Island. It was a remarkable development in Māori history. What we have here, I think, is something quite close to the birth of a Māori people as against a collection of disunited tribes. This was as important to Māori politics as Kāwati's modern pā were to Māori warfare. At first, Pōtatau had good relations with the Pākehā, and he tried to make it clear that the king movement was no threat to them. But land sales abruptly slowed down. Māori began to look more united, and Māori independence looked more permanent. In 1855, Colonel Thomas Gore Brown replaced George Grey as governor. Brown wanted to get New Zealand's great future as the Britain of the South back on track. He needed a test case, a local incident which would restart land selling and teach Māori quickly and cheaply that the country was to be ruled by Queen Victoria and not by King Pōtatau. Brown found his opportunity here in Taranaki, on the banks of the Waitara River. The British settlement of New Plymouth had been founded close to Waitara in 1842. For many years, it had cooperated peacefully with the Māori communities of Taranaki. But the settlers of New Plymouth cherished their dreams of a great future, and they thought progress was too slow.
Well, the settlers wanted to expand from New Plymouth. They weren't satisfied with the amount of territory they had available. And they were very envious of the vast amount of produce that was being brought out of this valley. And they wanted to come out here and expand and use what wasn't in full use by the Māori. They wanted to extend and build new farms, break in new territory, and do what they intended to do when they first left England.
The New Plymouth settlers' dissatisfaction with the 60,000 acres of Taranaki land they had bought was intensified by their town's lack of a decent harbour. Waitara could provide a harbour and unleash their retarded progress. But between them and Waitara stood the Atiawa chief, Wiremu Kingi Te Rangitake. During the Wellington War of 1846, Kingi, who was then living in Waikanae, had supported the British against Te Rauparaha. In 1848, he and his people returned home to the Waitara, to their ancestral lands, where a few of their kin had been keeping the fires of ownership burning. Wiremu Kingi was determined not to sell.
Listen, Governor, I will not permit the sale of Waitara to the Pākehā. Waitara is in my hands. I will not give it up. I will not. I will not. I will not!
The tribe split into two factions, landholders and land sellers. Between 1854 and 1858, these two factions fought quite a bitter civil war in which something like 100 people were killed and wounded. The landholders were led by Wiramukingi and openly supported by the tribes of South Taranaki.
The land sellers were secretly supported by the settlers and led by Taira Manuka and Ihaia Te Kirikumara. The Atiawa feud ended in 1858, but the very next year, Taira offered 600 Waitara acres to the government. Kingi, the senior chief, vetoed the sale, but Taira, backed by Ihaia, persisted with his offer. With the Atiawa divided, Governor Gore Brown seized his chance to teach Māori who really ran the country. Ignoring the ruling of the senior chief, he accepted Taira's offer.
His Excellency the Governor has instructed the Honourable Colonel Gold to take possession without delay of the land at Waitara sold to the Crown by Te Taira.
When Governor Gore Brown sent his land surveyors onto the Waitara block in February 1860, Wiramukingi supporters turned them back. So the governor sent in his troops. The first shots of the Taranaki War were fired here on the 17th of March, and New Zealand plunged into conflict. This is the place where New Zealand's Great Civil War of the 1860s began. You can imagine what the equivalent site in the United States would be like. 300-foot monument, tourist mecca. In New Zealand, this is it.